I just wanted to do a quick video comparing the Driven Fab V3 catch can. And I really wanted to compare it to the MAP catch can that came out recently. I have the V3 on my own personal car, and I just got my hands on the Driven Fab catch can, which I'll be installing on a customer's final edition. I also brought the stock coolant reservoir for reference. Kind of hideous, but this one's clean because it came off a really low mileage car. Oh, and there she goes. We'll set this aside for the time being. Now, I know a lot of people have had issues with Driven Fab getting their product. It appears that they're coming out with a V4, which makes the V3 very hard / impossible to get. Now, I had the V2 prior to the V3, and I like both cans. They both work great. So I came up with a list of similarities and differences, I guess, to compare the two. So obviously they're both catch cans and they're both coolant reservoirs, so they're both 2-in-1 cans, which are located where the stock coolant reservoir would be, which was that ugly plastic container we got rid of. So they both kind of work the same way in that sense. There's some differences and some similarities, of course. One of the main differences that you can see right away is the Driven Fab is welded sheet metal, whereas the MAP one, MAPerformance, is billet aluminum. So that's, I guess, a nice feature there. I find the Driven Fab to be lighter. The MA actually has a fair bit of weight to it. I don't know if it's because it's such a thick chunk of aluminum or not, but it does have some weight to it, which I guess is good and bad depending what you want. Let's talk about the baffling for a second inside. So the MAPerformance has the 2 inlet ports right over here, and all that they have inside, all the way through here, is basically steel wool. So this is where your filter would be sitting on top, just like that. So it's just steel wool packed all the way through, which works. The Driven Fab, on the other hand, this is what I like about it a lot, is that it has screens. So it's got 2 little screens on either of the inlets. It's got baffles inside, and it has steel wool as well. So it's got 3 separate ways of separating the water and the oil out of the air. And what I also like about it is that it has this big chamber. I just had this loose. It has a big chamber under here, so it's really easy to drain. There's nothing in there. It's just super easy to drain because you can stick a turkey baster or a pump and get everything out. If it focuses in, you might not be able to see it, but you can see some of the baffling that's in there. That might be in the way. Yeah, you can see some of the crud that it's accumulated, and I just had this emptied not that long ago. Yeah, whereas the Driven Fab, or sorry, the MAPerformance does not, so it forces you to drain it from the bottom because you can't simply stick a pump or a turkey baster in there and suck out all the gunk. One of the things I do like about the MAPerformance can is that it has all these bolts holding it together, the 2 halves together, which makes it serviceable. The Driven Fab does not. The V2 did not, and the V3, which is this one here, does not either. So if something happens inside, you can't get to it without cutting it in half to say repair. Now, they do have a lifetime warranty on the Driven Fab, and that's actually how I got the V3. I had an issue with the V2, and they honored it, no questions asked. Sent me the V3 free of charge, so that's how I ended up getting the V3 upgrade. Another +1 for the MAPerformance is that it has a coolant level, basically. So this has a float, and it has a little rod in here that comes up, so it shows you your coolant level, so you know what's inside of it. The stock one you can visually see because it's plastic. The Driven Fab has nothing, so you have no clue how much coolant is in your overflow. If you have too much, it'll spew out, and if you don't have enough, well, you just don't have enough. So that's a downside, I guess, of the Driven Fab. Speaking of coolant, the other thing that this has is it has a coolant relief valve, which is this guy right here. So it has a little port on the side, hard to see. Let me see if I can get it to focus. It has a port so that if there's too much coolant or too much pressure, it spews out through there. Now, the downside of that is that it's not routed anywhere. It's basically going to be sitting here somewhere and spewing out all over your rad fans and all over your belts and all over the engine compartment. The Driven Fab one uses a little bit of a different system, more like the stock one, where it has a hose, which I have routed down towards the ground. So if you have too much pressure or too much coolant, they'll simply leak it down away from the car. that's kind of how the stock one is in relation to that as well. It has this nipple which has a hose which points it away and at the ground and away from the engine compartment. So in that sense, I do like the Driven Fab one more because it gets it out of the engine bay. It gets the water towards the ground. In terms of filters, the Driven Fab always came with a genuine K&N filter. MAPerformance comes with a no-name filter. The filter doesn't do anything, it just literally releases the air out into the atmosphere, so it's not filtering anything coming in per se. So I don't think that's a big difference, it's just the thing I wanted to note. Next we can talk about the hoses and fittings. So these are the Driven Fab hoses, they always come all black. MAPerformance, they're black with the silver ends. Now, short of the radium fuel pulse dampener, as you can see, everything in my engine bay is basically black. So to me, I'm going to prefer the Driven Fab just because it is all black. Just for the theme I'm going. Again, this is all personal preference. The fittings all seem to be high quality on both kits. The fittings that go into the valve cover are basically identical, and I'll show you a close-up of the ones that were included with the Driven Fab, or sorry, with the MAPerformance kit, because I have them installed on the valve cover, but the lines obviously aren't on yet, so you can actually see what they look like. Again, they're identical to the Driven Fab unit. So here we are on the other car now. This is where the MAPerformance can is about to go. Just wanted to do a close-up of these fittings since they are the same on both kits. So this one just relocates the stock PCV valve. You screw the old one out, you screw the new one in, it's pretty straightforward. And for comparison's sake, there's a stock PCV valve. You can see the difference in hole size. One's plastic, one's aluminum, obviously. And going on the other side, now this is for the aluminum valve cover. I'm not sure how the plastic ones work, since I've never had a plastic one, never had to install it. This one is also a -10, and it press fits into the valve cover. Now, a good trick if you're installing one of these on either of the kits, put this in the freezer, and if you don't have the valve cover painted, you can take a little bit of heat from a heat gun and heat this part up so it expands it, and then the cool from the freezer freezes this, so it shrinks it. It's a lot easier to slide in together. You just take a piece of wood with a hammer or just a mallet and kind of work your way in. Now, if you have the one frozen and the other one heated, it goes in pretty easily. And here's the stock one in relation. Hard to tell because the light's against it, but you can see the difference here. Okay, so now that I have the MAPerformance catch can installed, or at least most of the way installed, I didn't finish up all the piping and stuff because I got a few other things I got to do to this before it's ready to go. I just wanted to go over the ease of installation for both cans. Now, I did find the MAPerformance a lot easier to install. That came with, I guess, a good side and a bad side. The way they mount them is a little bit different. So the MAPerformance has a big long Allen nut that goes from the top here and goes all the way to the catch can and to the bottom into where the factory mount would be for the factory overflow. So this makes it really easy because once you remove the old stuff, you pretty much just slide this in place, thread that in, and you're done. That's all there is to it. The thing I don't like about it is that it only has one mounting point. So if that for whatever reason comes loose, you know, that big bolt comes loose, this is free to twist around as it wishes. Now, I don't know if you can see in the video, but it is very close to the power steering reservoir, or sorry, not the power steering reservoir, to the power steering pump. Ooh, my phone just fell out of its mount here. It's very close to the mount, so my fear would be if this comes loose and rotates, it could potentially hit the pulley for the power steering. And it could potentially hit something else too, who knows, right? But that would be my main concern if that thing is spinning up to, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,000 RPM, and that catch can comes in contact with it, it's going to make a bit of a mess. Now my second problem is, this just seems a bit unfinished to me. Normally there's a bracket that goes from here to the factory overflow, bracket, and that's no longer there. So to me, that just looks unfinished. The Driven Fab one, although it's a lot harder to get in the way they have it designed, has 2 mounting points, one of which being right here, so kind of completes the look, completes the finished look, I guess, and then, you know, you don't have to risk it coming loose and hitting anything. Other than that, the lines went in pretty easily. I like this little thing they give you here to separate them. And I guess this brings me to my next point, which I've touched on briefly, the ease of drainage. So if you do not buy their drain kit, which I have left out, just to show you, if you don't purchase this from them, or decide to make your own or whatever, you're pretty much forced to take the catch can out every single time, dump it on its side to empty it, and then put it back in. So you're constantly reinstalling it, you know, every 2,000 to 3,000 miles, depending on what condition you're driving and how fast it fills up. The Driven Fab one, since it has that empty chamber underneath the filter, I can easily just stick a turkey baster. All I gotta do is take this filter off, stick a turkey baster or another pump in, pump it out, within 2 minutes you're good to go. This you'd have to remove and reinstall. Or you can buy the drain kit. And I guess my last step here, my last final comparison is price. So the Driven Fab came in, hold on, I have it written here. The Driven Fab came in at $400 US, and that came with everything that you needed, much like this kit. The difference is the MAPerformance comes up to $550 US, so it's $150 US different. And if you want to purchase this, that's another $50 US on top of that, making this kit $600 US. And maybe for my American viewers, that's not too bad, but for us Canadians up here in the Great White North, we end up getting pretty screwed with the currency exchange, duties, shipping, etc., taxes. So a kit like this ends up coming out to around $1,000 by the time it makes it to us here in our hands, right? So it's, you know, it's a fair bit of money to spend. So the Driven Fab in that sense, I think, wins just because it's, you know, significantly cheaper, $200 cheaper, which in Canadian terms, I guess would probably be about, you know, $300-400 cheaper by the time it's all said and done. So that's significant. Now, I didn't really compare it to the radium cans. I know that's another big competitor for these things in terms of catch cans. Now, that's a completely different setup. I have installed a few. They have their pros and cons as well, but from a price point, the radium cans come in at about $380 US from a quick search. So it's, you know, it's almost half the price of what this complete kit would be. So I guess that's another option if you're looking to save. Now, I didn't say anything about universal cans. You can obviously get universal cans and fit them yourself. But obviously, nobody was there to design the kit, basically, to have it fit nice and have everything work. That's all up to you, how you want to make it work. Now, my thoughts. Would I purchase any of these kits, say the Driven Fab was still available, or the MAPerformance? And even though I have the Driven Fab on my car, no, I would not purchase either of the cans. Not that they're not nice, they're gorgeous. They look amazing. But for me, it's just a price point thing. I don't think I'd be able to pay $1,000 literally for a catch can. I would definitely be making my own if I had that option. Now, you're going to say, hey, how come you do have the Driven Fab V3? Well, I got really lucky with that V3. Like I said, I had the V2 before, which I purchased used from a fellow really, really cheap. I think I paid $150 for it. And I had it fail on me, which partially was my fault, partially wasn't. When I reached out to Driven Fab, they did send me a brand new one free of charge. So that's how I ended up with the V3. But if I had to pay $1,000 out of pocket to get that V3, I definitely would not. So again, that's just my thoughts. I want to do a comparison. You know, it's end of January 2021, so I'm not sure what prices were going to be like for the V4 if they ever come out with it, or, you know, prices on catch cans in general for the Evo 10. But as these cars are getting up in age, you know, you're going to see more and more with mods. And I do highly recommend catch cans for them. If you actually drain one out once in a while, it's disgusting, the shit that comes out of it that your engine would otherwise be sucking in and burning, right? So I do recommend them, but for the price point, if you don't have $1,000 laying around and you're Canadian like I am, there's definitely other options out there. Okay, thanks for watching.